course. I mean, it was very useful, especially, I mean, basics of the, if you know basics of the search engine optimization and learn how it progressed, it is impressive, of course. So there will be questions, but I have some. We receive lots of emails to, for example, from the content providers at Startup Turkey, especially, or Startup Istanbul. They wanted to write guest posts, and probably with the guest posts, they wanted to backlink. Is it right?
Yeah, so that's a very common tactic, if you will, for backlink building, which is known as, say, guest posting or doing interviews. Right? You could imagine that I create a blog and I want to interview you, Barack, and I say, okay, well, can you spare some time? I'd love to interview you, get your thoughts. And then I create this roundup of 50 different experts that I've interviewed. And the purpose of a lot of those is so that you as Barack will then link out to that interview. Or subsequently, if I approach you and say, I want to do a guest blog post, will you accept it? And can I link back to my website? And the short of the answer is, well, it's up to you, right? If you want to be accepting guest posts, then you can do whatever you want to do, and it will work to a certain degree. And if you want to go and pitch people guest posts, sometimes they'll come back and say no. Sometimes they'll go back and say it'll cost you this amount of money. And sometimes they'll just say, yeah, but you have to provide the piece of content. And so it's really just a quantity game of how many people can you pitch to do a guest post, and how many of them will actually say, okay, you can write a post on my blog and link back to your website.
And which tools are you using for search engine optimization for your company? And which tools do you recommend for the startups to use for the basic, intermediate, and advanced?
Yeah, all right, that's a good question. Let me see here. I would do something along the lines of this. So in terms of we call them Swiss Army knife SEO tools, things that do everything. You have SEMrush, you have Ahrefs. These are probably your two best SEO Swiss Army knife tools. They'll do everything. If you wanted to crawl and diagnose technical errors on your site, we would probably say, so for crawling, Screaming Frog, SEO Spider. That one's pretty cheap and free. It's like a freemium model. Or if you have a larger site, like something like Deep Crawl, is also fairly affordable these days. If you wanted to do rank tracking and whatnot, performance, we would probably just lump that into SEMrush and Ahrefs. Obviously, if you want to do some content optimization, our own tool, ClearScope, is what we would recommend that you use for kind of figuring out content quality. And then
should you also a little bit clarify what ClearScope does, by the way?
Of course. So we can go through here to get an understanding of how things to do in Istanbul. All right, so you run reports in ClearScope. What ClearScope does is that it goes to whichever Google that you selected in this drop-down right here, and then in whichever language that we support. And then we say, okay, well, what are the top 30 ranking pieces of content that are performing for things to do in Istanbul? We then dive into each piece of content, doing our best to throw out noise elements like nav bars, sidebars, footers, that kind of stuff. So doing something like this, pulling off the body of content like this right here. And then we run this content through the two industry leaders in natural language processing. So you'd have then Google Cloud, natural language, top ranking content goes through. And then you'd have IBM Watson, something like this. So ClearScope uses then Watson to pull out the top ranking entities surrounding the pieces of content you can see here, right? So IBM Watson will say, given that content that you just fed me, I think that it's talking about things like Blue Mosque, Hagia Sophia, Taksim Square, Topkapi Palace. Right, you'll see here Google Cloud will come back and say, okay, given the same piece of content, I think it's talking about Blue Mosque and Istanbul archaeological something and this other mosque. So we take these recommendations, do the same thing across the top 30 results right here, and then we put it all into a nice text editor experience, which will allow you to check for that subject matter authority. So you'll see here, if I talk about the things to do in Istanbul, Turkey, then you'll see here, ClearScope will be going through and saying, okay, great, you've talked about Istanbul and Turkey, but if you were to cover the subject matter comprehensively, you would say, number one, you should visit the Blue Mosque, or number two, you should visit the Hagia Sophia, and three, and you can see here, right, as I'm drafting, ClearScope's going through and checking to see how comprehensively I've addressed the subject matter. I'm also say, yes, you should talk about Turkish delight. And the reason is because all of these other top ranking pieces have all mentioned Turkish delight. So we then say, okay, this is what you need to talk about to comprehensively talk about the subject matter. And then you can see here, right, I still have this piece of content from US News. We can take this, copy it, and then stick in existing content like that. And ClearScope will quickly go through and say, okay, yeah, it's okay, right? You can sort by unused. And we can see that this piece of content doesn't talk about Turkish delight. If it did, then it wouldn't be unused. So you can very quickly sort by all of the different ideas or concepts that you can consider adding to then make your piece of content from a semantic like entity perspective, way better. So that's how ClearScope works.
That's great. Go ahead, please. The services that you are using, by the way.
Oh yeah, and right. The last one I was gonna say is advanced search operator. So this is just things that you do on Google. If you Googled advanced search operators, then right, these are Google commands that you can do, right? Like cite colon, or you can see here. Okay, this is like if I did cite colon clearscope.io, then we'll get back everything that's on ClearScope that is like on Google's index. And so we could say like cite tripadvisor.com. And we'll say, okay, there's 108 million TripAdvisor things. And then I can say, Istanbul. And then Google will say, okay, there's still like 1.4 million things that mention Istanbul. And then I can do, okay, like, in URL, which would then say like this, like it would be like attractions-g-Istanbul. So I can then say like in URL-Istanbul. And then I can also do like in title forum, right? And then I can do it like that. And you can see here, I've already basically now just stripped out everything that has -Istanbul forum in the title and like mentions Istanbul. And I already then like could dissect a very sliver of a piece of a website very quickly. So you have like site colon, in URL colon, in title colon, and then you can also just like minus it off. Like I could say, okay, well in URL is -Istanbul, but we can say not in the title mention forum, right? And now we've taken everything out that mentions forum in the title. So everything that talks about Istanbul but is not a forum. And so there's a lot of really cool things that you can do just with advanced search operators.
Mm-hmm. And how about the videos and also other kind of content in the search engine optimization? If you have a unique video, because while searching, nowadays social media results are also listed on the top of the Google results, especially if you have a YouTube channel and if it is related, then I think some of the related results are also shown.
Yep. So this is a question about video, like say social media, SEO. Again, this goes back to that question of search query deserves X. So it really depends on the searcher, like intent. And what we found is that for specifically, I'm just going to talk about video, how to, why, is pretty much always best serviced through a video, right? If I do how to surf, as the example I brought up, video. I do how to change a spark plug, right? See here, video, right? So if you're finding a lot of videos that show up like this in the video block, in the above the fold experience, then we would say, okay, that's a search query that deserves a video. And then, how to why. We also find like why reviews as something where videos would show up. I don't have any good ideas for you, but we would say either take another piece of content that is performing well for the video on YouTube and embed it inside your piece of content, right? So come here and then say you can like take the embed right here like that and just put that inside your article. That's probably the easiest way, or else filming or creating your own video is probably necessary to do well. In terms of social media is specific to just people, right? If I search for Elon Musk, then Google is going to say, oh yeah, you probably want Elon Musk. And here's what his Twitter has to say. So you don't really have to worry that much about ranking social media. It's just something that gets associated with your company or website for like at some point when you tweet a lot or something like that.
Is Google trying the left menu, by the way? I have recently seen the left menu in, for example, some queries such as Corona in different countries.
Yeah.
Corona in India, for example.
Yeah.
Yes.
Google is definitely trying this for sure.
Yeah. And also, there are questions. Let me ask you the audience questions. I have many, but let's ask. How good are SPAs today? First paint is usually slower, but further content is serving is faster. To which extent Google understands SPAs?
Well, I actually don't know what an SPA is.
All right, Pavel, should you please define SPA, clarify more SPA? What is your advice on how to be considered by Google as a subject authority and creating effective backlinks?
So that it just takes time, right? Just create high quality content, and over time you should see yourself bubble up to the top. I mean, using these tools like say SEMrush, Ahrefs, defining which keywords you want to go after, where your competitors are getting backlinks, and then just going out and creating the best piece of content that you can and building the links is at the surface like what we talked about. This specific talk wasn't designed to give you tactical advice. It was more designed to like help you understand what are the different moving parts. So yeah, I think tactically speaking, it's all pretty dry. As in, you can see here, like we get a lot of requests for like some of our websites, and people will just reach out and like it's just a volume game, right? They'll say, oh, right here, hey, okay, that's advertising. But we get a lot of like things that are just saying, hey, can I like give you a backlink, or can I do a guest post on your site or whatever. And that's pretty much what all like websites will continue to get in terms of backlinks, is just all these outreach. And then that's just a quantity game. And then from a content quality perspective, just kind of make sure that what the user actually wants, you're like serving it as quickly as possible.
Pavel has answered. SPAs are single page applications.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Google doesn't really like single page applications. I can't really think of one off the top of my head. I think this one might be a single page application. Yeah.
Right.
So SPA, single page applications, like you've kind of put yourself into a tough spot from a Google perspective. You want to make sure that like when you have all of these elements that you don't use spans or like, you know, divs or whatever, like you still have them be wrapped in like anchors. So you still need everything to be anchors if you want Google to click on them. That's perhaps the most important piece to a single page application. From there, you also want to make sure your sitemap.xml exists in your search console so that you're giving Google all of the different URLs that it could exist, because oftentimes you're going to be like dropping site like just pages from the search just based on how single page applications work. And I think these two are probably the biggest problems that we see from SPAs from a JavaScript perspective.
Another question. ClearScope is $350 a month. That is something as a we as a startup can either group buy or rather engage with gray hat SEO agency. What are your comments? Do you have discounts on ClearScope for the startups?
So we do. We have a startup plan. It goes just as low as 200 per month for 25 reports and 1 user. In terms of like the other part of the question, right? Like SEO agencies, I'd say any SEO agency that guarantees or promises results is oftentimes actually like a red flag or a yellow flag, right? If they're going to say, hey, Barack, right, we're going to get you double your traffic in 3 months. It's like, you probably don't want to go with them, right? The best SEO, so like don't go with these. Best like agencies are going to say stuff like, it depends, or things along the lines of, you know, like not sure how long. And they're going to work really hard on your content quality and then do kind of like volume-based outreach to achieve links. The Black hat SEOs are going to guarantee results. They're going to be very intransparent about how they're going to do it. And what they're typically going to be doing is then purchasing like low quality or spammy links, whether that's through like comment spam or private blog networks, that's PBNs. That's how a lot of people will sell links, right? They'll operate 500 different websites, and then they'll just buy links from these websites that look like they're independently operated, but really not.
So another question is there a good WordPress plugin you suggest for the WordPress blog site?
Okay, yeah. For a WordPress plugin, we usually recommend Rank Math as the free, like better than Yoast thing. It comes with basically like sitemap generators, like schema related things. So definitely check out Rank Math if you want a nice WordPress plugin.
And for the sitemaps that you mentioned, should the startups also monitor their Webmaster, Google Webmaster? How should they do that?
Yeah, you'll see here to monitor your Google Webmaster, you'll want to go to like index coverage, and you can see here, right? These errors are what you want to avoid. That's basically it, right? So within your Google Search Console, to monitor it effectively, you just go to like index coverage. So index coverage, and then look for any errors. I mean, setting it up in the first place is just going to be very important. And then Google will literally email you like when you have problems. So you'll see here in my email, if I look for Search Console, they'll email me like performance stuff, but they'll say, oh, look, new mobility issues related to ClearScope, like too small to rate, clickable elements are too close together, right? And so just signing up and verifying your domains, you're going to get the Google to just email you when errors happen.
Mm-hmm. How do you make your inbox zero?
By just ruthlessly prioritizing everything. But you can see here, this is just one of like 2 inboxes. I think this one here, this is my ClearScope one. I'm pretty close. Yeah, I'm pretty close. But it's just, you just got to close everything out by the end of the day, or else things are going to be built up, and that's not going to be good.
Just a second, let me check for the questions. Do you think link exchange is actually that bad than what it is portrayed?
I don't think it's bad, right? I just think that it's a lot of people will just kind of spend a lot of time doing it, but not get any results. And the reason is because, say, you exchange a link with, like 2 startups exchange links. Well, if both startups were just very low authority to begin with, then the value of those links being exchanged is not that worthwhile. But if you were to go to, say, Startup Turkey and try to do a link exchange there, then, you know, Barack might say, oh, well, right, like just as an example, like, you know, you're not quite at my level, so why should I do a link exchange with you? So that's kind of the biggest problem with link exchanges, is that like it's usually either 2 very invaluable links are being exchanged, or else there's too great of a power difference between the links being exchanged, and basically one party will just say it's not enough value for me, so I'm not going to do it.
And another question, as we are coming to 1 hour, is brand's social network with many subscribers being a significant factor for websites' site authority with Google?
No. So Google doesn't care about, say, a Facebook page that has lots of followers or whatever, or a Twitter account that has lots of followers, because that's not in Google's control, right? It would be too easy to game if Google used Facebook followers or Twitter followers as a signal, because I could just buy a bunch of followers onto my Twitter account and then improve my Google rankings, and Google wouldn't be able to reliably depend upon Twitter or Facebook's reporting of what a legitimate user appears to be. Obviously, that's to say, if you do have a big following, and as a result, a lot of people are Googling, you know, like Startup Turkey, because people keep tweeting about it, then yeah, that's going to indirectly help your SEO. But as a direct ranking factor, it has no impact.
For a learning and improving English company, where is the first place to start improving SEO ranks?
There you can see here, that's ranking right there. I would say that for Udemy has very good SEO courses, right? Turkish company. I'd say I haven't really looked at a bunch of them, but they do seem to like pop up quite a bit. They're also, you know, not terribly expensive. So I think these are all fairly good like things to just get up and running very cheap to like get an understanding of how SEO works.
Bernard,